want to start off with Glarb, okay? With Ryan. You okay? Can we call you Glarb instead of Ryan? Glarb, yeah. Yeah, it's your nickname. It's your brand, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Glarb's been designing for over 20 years. Created
Since 2011.
2011. Well, Glarb Design. And he's had backing in industry. He's worked at sign shops. He's done all, had his hands in on many different assets of the industry. And for me, my observation to you, Ryan, is each one of your designs, I feel, displays an impressive attention to detail, depth of layers in your artwork, textures, and pinpoint templating. So for me, coming to, what I know in my little world of templating, I see your stuff, super impressive. So here's a question for you. When a customer is willing to pay whatever, how do you quote your projects?
The way I quote my projects is I have a minimum base rate, and that will cover full design, paneling, and then if they want to do print, obviously that's separate. If there's, if they want to do reflective, that's a totally different animal of paneling, unless you're using the 60-inch, so 48, which means you typically have to break down panels, seam the hood, get a little bit creative because reflective's really expensive. And I work with a bunch of other printers too that they don't want to waste material, so you want to maximize the paneling and break it down from like 48, 24, 12, and so everything fits really nice and there's minimum waste. If there's any overlays, if they want to do reflective overlays or like a half and half wrap, then that's an extra fee that I charge. If they want to see multiple designs up front, then it's a fee. Or another thing too is if we get to a certain point, so when they come with me or to me with a design idea, I'll throw together like 3 rough designs and they choose which one they like. So we start moving into that direction. And then we'll continue in that direction, and I don't cap my revisions, so it's unlimited revisions. But if we go back a step, and if they say, hey, I actually want to go back to option 1 instead, to me that's not a revision, that's a redesign. So I would charge a fee for that. But I try to explain this upfront to my clients so everything's understood moving forward, because if you don't speak to them or communicate clearly, that's when they start getting upset and frustrated and just think that you're just trying to get more money for no reason.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Next, we'll move to Kevin. Over 20 years in the industry, designing, installing. For me, I look at it as, each one of you are different. It's like if we were a band, everybody has their different style. So for me, I've pinpointed you, right? I feel like you're the Beastie Boys of the rap industry, right? You're in your own lane, you're unique, right? And I think when we look at your raps, we know there's a lot of time in design. And then I think what other people may or may not know, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, design, production, and installation all by yourself. I mean, you may have people in your shop, but I believe the entire creation is set solely on you. So from the entire process all the way from start to finish. So here's our question, because I sit back and I'm like, all right, what's the one to ask him? So how about this, Kevin? When design possibilities are endless and the palette of wrap colors and textures just keeps growing, how hard is it to constantly one-up yourself?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's I beat myself up on every wrap I do. I reprint panels, like you said. I do design, production, and install. So if I install something and it didn't match up to my template, I'll just go reprint it. I'll eat that cost because I know what in my head what my end vision is for that client. Especially a lot of the Gold Rush cars, like me and Ryan do a ton of Gold Rush cars or rally cars. But the one up each time, it's pretty hard. It's definitely a mind game, man. It's yeah, I beat myself up a lot about it because it's not me personally just beat myself up. It's every client like, oh look, I saw you did this McLaren for Gold Rush. I want you to do my Ferrari, and then it's the clients wanting to one up themselves, And most of my friends too. That's the crazy part. So they always want something bigger and better and all of that. So it's definitely hard. But with having so many different materials and new products coming in, I try to mix. I don't know. I'll say I throw a lot of shit to the wall and see if it sticks. That's kind of been my motto. I've been lucky because a lot of it has stuck, but I've also wasted tens of thousands of dollars trying new products and new techniques, stuff that just didn't work. You know, films that aren't really meant for a car, I'll try it on something that's not, I'll try it on a car, even if it's an embellishment, because at the end of the day, you want your car to stand out, especially on these big rallies or for like Replica King. And for like Replica King in 2015 with the Lamborghini, everybody knows the Lamborghini. But so how did I have to come back and top that, that was probably one of the hardest things ever. So when I did the Joker, I'm like, how do I top a chrome Lamborghini, So I went and I did the chrome lowrider, something completely off the spectrum, from a 2015 Huracan to a 63 Impala. And I used like 14 different Avery products, 14 different films. Nobody would think about using their etched glass film in their sign vinyl and their gold leaf and their silver leaf. It was 14 different products, I forgot all together. But I think we had 5 different chromes, digital media. So that kind of stuff won up in myself. And that wasn't even for a client. That was a client that let me have his car and do whatever you want. It was, for me, it was like, I'm invest all this money because I need to beat myself last year. It wasn't even, that car got ripped off, like all that got ripped off months after, like 2 months after. So one up in myself is hands down the hardest thing. But I'll say this, and my only little secret is I get more inspiration for, I guess, styles of design. If you ever go look at my Instagram, I guarantee you, I follow way more people that aren't in the rap industry or graphics than I do that's in it. It's hard to explain. You might see me following a welder or somebody that makes knives or something, but they're making something that's unique and custom, and that's what they're famous for. And I might see a cool knife or whatever, and I'm like, how can I implement something in that style onto a wrap? I'm not trying to put a knife on the side of the car, but the way the metal's formed, like Damascus, for instance. If anybody knows what a Damascus knife is, it's layers of metal that's constantly beat to make this weird pattern. I've spent hours trying to recreate that. Now I have a seamless Damascus pattern. But who else has it? But that's, like I said, that's where me one up in myself is, how do you keep stepping up? And I got to compete against guys like Ryan down there. So master of layers and stuff. So yeah, it's hard. It's my biggest downfall and challenge at the same time.
And I think about it a lot. I'm sure a lot of customers come to you and say, well, I want my car better than his. And I think you probably run into the same thing that Ryan does. Well, I'll pay whatever. And I think even tough part is we've started to dial our stuff in. Well, how do you even know what you're going to charge when you start diving in? And now I'm 7 layers of different vinyl, and it ain't even about the layers of vinyl. Now it's the value of the thought process of just making it different. So I love that, and I think that's, probably a lot of what
I'll
Ryan
say
learned.
this. When somebody says they'll do whatever and pay whatever, when I'm trying a new film and a new product and something that is not necessarily meant for a car, I won't charge them for that R&D just to see if that's going to work. I can't, because they're paying for the final product. They're not paying for me to R&D something that's not supposed to go from a window to a car. So I'll waste a minimal of time and I'll test it and do my thing, and then if it works, and they pay for it. But I'll invest. I don't mind investing into crazy materials and just testing it, wrapping oddball stuff in the shop, letting it sit out in the sun. We've wrapped some pretty crazy stuff, so I don't necessarily charge them for my crazy idea, but I charge them for my crazy final product. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll direct our next one to Dan. So I've had a few discussions with you, Dan. Me and my designer listen to you. We're designing in our office. We listen to podcasts. We're constantly, feeding ourselves with, new ideas and thoughts and just listening to people. And I know you've been doing Your portfolio is large, over 25 years, would you say, of branding? And I think something that'll be helpful for designers, just like for us. I mean, we're a shop of 9. I know your shop, you have several on your staff, 20. And so I think what's helpful for us is knowing how, and a lot of questions that maybe smaller shops might have is, what are some advice or practices that you can give to designers, that whether it's one-man shop, two-person shop, or what would you see, and you would really, the advice that you would give for designers to try to get them to that next level of just not being a sign shop or just not being a wrap shop?
Yeah, well, I think just piggybacking off the question you had for Kevin and the idea that nothing we do today we should consider to be good enough for tomorrow. So as designers, like, it's flattering when someone says, "Oh my God, that's the best wrap you guys have done." And you're like, okay, that's kind of cool for the moment, but then you're like, oh, I got to do better now. I got to one up that. And that constant drive to put out the best quality work and the best execution of that is something that we really strive for in everything that we do. So as designers, I think the best thing that you can do is to really just study the craft, to study, I'm on the commercial side, so it's a little bit different, but on the commercial side, it's really, really important for you to know your responsibility. And we look at design as if lives are at stake. And that's really how we internally speak to our own customers and our own staff. So our staff really believes and knows the impact of our work. They are reminded of it on a daily basis, whether it's a text from a client saying, hey, we just grew from 1 million to 2 million, or we were able to hire so many more people. So the responsibility of the designer is significant. And I think if more people understood how critical that responsibility was, when a business comes to you and they're putting their trust in you, you had better know your job. You had better know how to actually execute that, because that business is dependent on that. And we've seen examples of trucks that were wrapped previously where the client literally got 0 phone calls from it. And then we rebrand them, and then we really changed their lives with design. So invest in yourself, invest in the study of the craft, invest in studying marketing, understanding consumer psychology, consumer behavior, and knowing who you're designing for. Like, I think it's cool when, guys like the panel up here comment and say, hey, that's a really cool wrap. But ultimately, I'm not really designing for them. I'm designing for that consumer that is going to purchase that product from that client that has hired us. So really understanding that, like, I think when I first started, I wanted to throw a whole bunch of crap into every design because it was super cool, and it was cool to put flames and diamond plate and crap like that. And then I realized, well, Mrs. Smith is the end user of this, and she doesn't like any of that stuff. So I have to remember who my audience is when we're designing. But, read books, study the idea of billboards and how they function in that environment, understand distance legibility. All those things really are things that you really should know, because that business is placing their trust in you. And so I just would say, just reinvest in yourself and learn as much as you possibly can. And yeah, look outside the industry. It's not just wraps. Like, go down the supermarket aisle. Like, I get tons of inspiration going shopping. Like, my wife thinks I'm crazy, but I love actually shopping sometimes because I pick up palettes and different color schemes and things like that. So just continue to really work and just accept the premise that nothing you're doing today you should really think is good enough for tomorrow. Because what happens then if you get to the top and you're like, oh, I'm at the top of my game, I'm the best I can be. Well, if you're not continuing to go up, then ultimately you're going down. So that, to me, is unacceptable. Like, so I love it when people say, hey, that's the best you've ever done. On one hand, like you say, like, it kind of sucks because you're like, oh shit, like, what am I going to do next? Like, how do I do better than that? But just keep working on improving yourself and accepting that responsibility, because it's so critical for that company that is putting their trust and their confidence in you. And on the other hand too, it is something to distinguish your shop when you take that care and when you really are vested in their success. So sorry, that was a little long-winded. Sorry.
No, hey, this is why we're doing this. Is it's about each one of you being totally different. And for us as designers, this is our nerd moment. This is our geek out moment of, really being able to pick you guys' brains and know exactly and ask these kind of questions, because it's about the bandwidth, right? It's about saying this now and then this video getting out and just leading the charge for, I guess, the next wave of designers that we hope will come in. And I think each one is important. Each one has a different drive and motivation of why you do what you do. So next we'll move to Jaime. So Jaime, for me, rap artist,
Kevin's the beast. He's one of my crisscross.
Well, we already know, and whether you know it or not, you get full credibility for any bus probably in the U.S. or in the world. I tell everybody I know, if it's somebody famous, it's a famous music artist, he's probably done it. So for me, I think it's probably super exciting. I'll get back to that and maybe ask that question. We'll come back around and ask you that one. But I feel like you get to deal with some of the biggest artists in the music industry, entertainers, and not only that, I feel like your skill, whether people know it or not, maybe they know you're a rapper, but your design and production that I know from afar, superior speed, skill, production, timing, and not only that, it's on some of the biggest canvases, in the rap industry. So what I think is important, and maybe it can help all our listeners, is what would you say, when you think about rapping a bus, what would you say is the biggest skill that's kind of helped you perfect, who it is you are, your day-to-day work as the rap artist, as somebody who can knock out a bus, and probably in our world we think you can do it in 6 hours, and you probably can if the money was right, I'm sure. But what's really the biggest skill that you feel has helped perfect your process and what you do?
Well, first off, thank you. Second of all, this is a good question for me because I thought about it a lot, and it's not just one skill per se that I can just home in on and say that's it. It's a culmination of several things, but it goes back to like what Glarb does. I take extreme pride in templating. I love template. As boring as that is for most people, I thrive on it. It's just because it's different. I've thrown every flame at every rap job, tread plate like Dan was talking about. But when you dial a template in and you print and you trim the fat on the job, you're saving money there, and then you're saving time on production. And then when the installer goes out there, you start telling that installer that you're going to start but the left edge up, the top's going to be 7/8 of an inch, the bottom's going to be 3/4 inch, take off. Don't look at the proof. And that's the way my shop runs now. Is I've created widgets out of buses, my process, so I don't even have to be there. Like they're installing right now. They know, any one of my installers can just go grab panel 10 and they know exactly where it goes and they just take off. So I create processes for everything I do. I'm just real anal about that, like even the way I streamline my files. But it all goes back from, templating is derived from installing. Like I treat installation as an
A high-end designer, I think it's very, very important that you spend some time installing. And so that way you and the installer can understand each other's frustrations and you can kind of play into that while you're designing. So it just, at the end of the day, you want to have a successful project. You don't want to reprint. You don't want to waste more time doing it. So just set yourself and the people that you're working with as a team up for success.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, 100%. I know, whether Dan knows it or not, we look at a lot of your vans and see, and I try to tell, even during some of our rap classes and some of our design classes, I say, when you look at this van here, the smartest thing about it is, and whether it's fancy or has tons of textures, the smartest thing in a lot of van designs, and some that, I pay attention to, and a lot of the designs that Kick Charge does, it'll fade up to that back corner to a solid color. Or the design can be tricky on the back, but as it goes to the front, right before that fender, right before that hood, it fades to a color. And for me, a lot of things that we teach in even in just installation, how can we do this 10 times in a row and get the same outcome? And then not only that, for both of your all's instances, we're pushing these designs out, and even more so maybe for Dan is I may have 25 different shops installing this same kit. So how can we be smart about this? How can we, it's still effective and do what it needs to do, but then also 25 shops with who knows how many different installers, is it going to get put on the same? We don't want, kits getting shifted or getting, placement. So I think that's probably super important. Would you say, I saw you nodding quite a bit. Would you want to chime in on the templating game there? Because we know you probably spend, tons of time. And then not only that, Ryan's disconnect is now having to make sure that. So would you say, now that you know that, do you feel that's tough for you to duplicate yourself, or that just that you're wanting that precision, alignment and templating?
Well, with me, since I'm designing, printing, and installing, it's a little different. I know Ryan does some installs too, but I know in his situation, it kind of sucks in a sense because he's banking on that installer to do something good, like take an incredible design and make it look good. And we all know at the end of the day, we've all gone to SEMA and seen beautiful designs that are terrible because the install's terrible. And it's not his fault. So I know the stress level he's dealing with, but luckily with me, I'm doing all of that in my own shop. So if I mess up, I go make me another template. But I just started, I'd say about 4 years ago, I started hanging up templates on my one of my big walls. And it's full, so I couldn't imagine with 18 years of templates, my whole shop would be covered floor to ceiling. But I'm not afraid to make a template. I have one of a Dodge Challenger, the whole entire side of the car. I had some old Arlon that I'd never use, and I made a template, and I do my measurements and all it. And like Ryan said, how pictures are skewed. You can't just grab an image off of Google. So I have all the breaking points, and I have certain Sharpies I use for certain color. Like each color is meant for an inner or an outer or a jam or a body line or a dashed line, solid line, all of that kind of stuff. Templating is my biggest thing, even with color change. So I kind of have the idea of before PPF kit. Well, I won't say before PPF, but PPF kits are designed to be seamless once they're installed. So I'll take a Camaro mirror. I'm like, I don't want to do this in one piece. Like, I want it to last. So I'll make a template. I use a lot of 2-inch and 1-inch yellow tape, and I'll put the make, model, year, the date, and I'll stick it on my wall. And if I need it again, I'll peel it off. But what I was going to say with templating at first, when Mully was finished, was I went to a shop back after Hurricane Ida, and he threw me on a bus. I know I didn't have a choice. And I was intimidated. I've never done a bus in all my life. And I got this 53-foot, I don't know, we were on scaffolding, so it was tall. But he's like, we got this, we're going to do this. And he threw me to one of his little guys, and he's like, you got this, 8 hours, whole thing, with window perf and everything. That's how dialed in his templates were. So for me to come in, and he lined up his panels, 1 through 10 or whatever it was. He's like, you're going to start here, do this one first, and this is why. And once you do the first one, you'll understand the rest. And he was back in production. So for somebody to template a 53-foot bus, and I'm talking about have the vents perfectly dialed in, where you could just line up a pre-cut piece and just, you're not sitting there with a knife trying to trim out 75 vent holes. Like, he has that dialed in so much pre-mask, boom, stuck on there. So that was cool because I was intimidated, but 8 hours to finish a whole bus, window perf and all, it's pretty crazy. So templating, I can't stress it enough. I know people don't want to do it because it's time, but man, it helps. Like when you do that template and you lay it out in Photoshop or whatever, and you do a little test print or something, and that part of the design flows. Like, it might look terrible when it's flat. It's going to swoosh up and do whatever, but when you put it on the car and it's straight, there's no greater feeling than seeing that final thing. So for me, that's my little touch. That's what I do.
If I could jump in, I think spend the time on templates, because once you have that template, you have it for forever. Somebody's going to come and use that template again. So mark that template, build a nice library of the templates that you have that are accurate, and just keep growing the library. But spend the time to create the template, and then you don't even have to worry about it. Like, lay out the paneling, make sure the measurements are spot on. So, and then save that as a separate file. So when if you do get another, 2018 Charger, you just go to your file, open it up. You already have the paneling, you already have the template. All you have to worry about is the design.
Yeah, and I use a lot of his templates that I've got. Me and him work together a lot, so he's given me a bunch of templates, and I know I don't have to question them. I mean, I'll still go back and measure and stuff like that, because if you don't measure, you just, can't just take a proof in the concept. But I won't say I'll use necessarily his templates. I use his renders like the bad wrap. He'll be the vehicle 3D, like a real 3D model where you can turn the lights off and all that. So he's thrown me a bunch. I do a lot of Mopars. Those are so dialed in, that's not even a question. I mean, we do the whole, like for me as a designer, I'm sure everybody here that designs or even installs, when you see something wrapped and you see part of a design on a fender and it gets cut off at the hood or from the fender to the bumper, as a designer, I can't, that eats my ass, man. I can't stand that. That's why we're all up here, because we take that time and we will make sure that that panel matches up, and it's all into template. If you don't test it or template it, you'll never get that panel to match up. And sometimes you have to waste a little bit of material just to try that. So a lot.
So I don't know if anybody just understood what I just went through. I think if you had any free time, I see the future templating company of the world here could solve a lot of headaches for a lot of us that are few days behind and probably willing to pay for that. So I was excited. I was like, oh, all right, I see the future of templating happening right now. I'll move this one over to Dan. So right now, with large companies, small companies, I know from templating and processes for everybody, and if you've ever been on Kickcharge's site, they offer, so many different elements than just fan wraps and designs. But when you go to work each day, what's your favorite part? And really, it's kind of a two-part. What you feel is the part you love the most? But what's really the most important? Like if you're dealing with a customer, there's certain things that you have to have, but what part, is the most important, and what part do you really love about, coming to work each day?
That's a tough one, because there's so many aspects of what we do that I still really love, but we really do form personal relationships with almost all of our clients. I have like 2,500 Facebook friends, and probably 2,000 of them are HVAC and plumbing owners. And so, you get to kind of live in their world and see the results that they are experiencing because of your work. So I'll take screenshots of something that they've posted, and then I'll post it in my company group chat so that everyone can really see and be reminded of the impact of our work. So I think just being able to come to work every day and know that we're producing work that is changing the lives of our clients, I mean, to me, that doesn't get any better. And to have a team around me that really embraces that philosophy. And a lot of the people that work for me used to work for bigger ad agencies, and they were doing work for Verizon or Campbell's Soup, and none of the work that they did, they felt actually made a difference in the lives of the people that they were producing the work for. And now they're personally, seeing firsthand the results, like how many people were hired by this company, or even like we had a company recently that we designed their logo, and they were $9 million when we designed it. And to do that every day, I mean, I got 27 years into this company, and to still come to work and be excited about that, and to know that the caliber of work that we produce as well is still, I think some of the best, this brand work that is in the industry. So, that's still really challenging and exciting and fun. So I'm super blessed just with an amazing team though too. Like I think one thing, I'm sort of the face of the brand, and I think maybe people think that I sit there and I produce like everything that goes out the door. I see 90% of it, and I probably touch 5% of it. I just have a really amazing team that get it, that I don't really have to personally touch everything. But it is fun too to personally touch stuff once in a while and to really get my hands dirty, and I still really enjoy that. So I kind of cherry pick the projects that I think I can really get even more passionate about. And then I think we're fortunate in the sense that a lot of clients give us a lot of latitude. So I don't respond very well to art direction from clients, and I love it when they just like, hey, listen, you're the expert, and just do what you think. And we're afforded a fair amount of latitude where I'm not really butting heads or doing 10 rounds of revisions and things like that. And they're paying a very high premium to use our service. And at that, I think, comes a lot of trust where they say, hey, you know what, you guys are the experts. If you think that this is what we should do it. And I think some of the work we do is scary for them because we believe in the idea of disruption. We believe in the idea of doing things that look different. Like, I don't want to put a logo that looks like it's actually for a plumbing and heating company. I want it to look different than what everyone expects it to look like. And that kind of takes guts for that owner to buy into that. To say, hey, we're going to put a logo on the side of your plumbing van and it's going to be a pepper and he's going to be holding a pipe wrench. And like, well, who thinks that's a good idea? So really getting them on board with that and having them trust us. They're scared, but they believe in it. And, we're lucky to have that reputation that allows us to really kind of push some boundaries and do some wacky stuff where I would say 10 years ago, I don't think anybody would have listened to me or said, hey, that's a really good idea, let's do something crazy like this. They would say, we're not going to do that. So that part is still really fun, and I'm definitely blessed to have that. So.
Well, for sure, and we appreciate that, you touching on that part of the process, because I think when these customers come to us, the confidence, and when we're speaking to them, they don't realize that, for us, we might be doing one van for Jimmy's Plumbing, but the amount of risk and challenge it takes to know the confidence, and you have the years of backing to know that, this formula works, if you will trust us, and that's probably the toughest part, is just knowing that, hey, do that, we'll speak confidently. And even as a designer, I've learned that just the way that I've interacted with them, learning the psychology of how you speak to people, and even when sending designs. But if I'm sending 8 different designs, the customer probably thinks that I'm unsure, and if they're unsure, they're going to be nervous, So I'm going to direct. Go ahead.
And to that point, though, the idea of how did I get it so that the clients, that we were able to earn their trust. So you have to work so hard to reinvest in the marketing of your own shop to instill that confidence. So you've got to work on your case studies. You've got to work on proving and showing results. And so we spend so much time going back to those clients and saying, what was the revenue before the rebrand, and what is the revenue 6 months after or a year later? And then we can market that as something that proves that what we do works. So there's a page on our site. If you guys go to kickcharge.com and just click on case studies, there's 40 examples of rebrands and the subsequent revenue growth that was after. It's really hard to argue with those results and say, well, these guys don't know what they're doing, right? So reinvesting in the marketing of your own shop and the results that you're able to get for your clients, it obviously takes work, but that's how you instill the confidence. That's how you have people believe in you, and that is also how you build a shop that is different than everyone else's. It's all great that everyone's 3M certified, but if everyone's 3M certified, why do I go to you instead of going to the shop down the street? Well, if you guys can prove that your design work will generate more revenue for my small business, well then I'm going to go to the shop that has proven to generate more revenue because of their design work. So the idea of just being unique in that sense and marketing yourself as experts on that particular vehicle wraps is something that if everyone in your area is all 3M certified in Avery service, so why do I go to you? Then all I care about is, well, what is the cost per square foot to install at your shop versus their shop? Well, if they can't get the design work that generates results anywhere else but at your shop, well, then you can charge a premium for that, because they can't just go down the road and get the same thing. Like in Jamie's instance, where are they going to go? They're going to go to somebody else that can do a bus like Jamie? So Jamie can charge a premium for that, because who does what he does? Who can execute at that level? So the more you can communicate that as far as your value proposition, then the better able you are to get higher money for your work, and to be less about square footage price and more about the value that your wraps actually provide. And I think that's just systemic an issue that no one really talks about. They just talk about, hey, we're at $8.50 a square foot, and That's how we think we're making money. Well, no, the design actually is more critical than your Avery certification. Like, I get it, certification is important and installation is important, but if the design sucks, I don't care how beautiful the install is, right? So anyway, I digress. Sorry.
No, I love that, and I'm great. I love it that you segued into that. I feel from my observation after having these conversations with you guys, probably something that people don't realize is the amount of time behind the scenes. The amount of time that Glarb is spending templating and getting his stuff, and all the layers, or either the time it takes for him to name all the layers, right? Kevin's templating time. Jamie. We've had conversations before about how much time. So even for Dan, just the researching time, which kind of leads me into some conversations I had with Jamie. And here's the question for you, Jamie. In your opinion, what are the main challenges that small shops are facing when trying to achieve a bigger name like Kick Charge and Rap Artist, Glarb, NOLA?
From a design perspective?
Yes, we had.
I can speak on this from experience. Is you can't afford to allow your designer time to develop, because most of the small shops can't afford a degree holding designer, because they're going to come in at 30 to 40 grand a year, and that's a lot for a small shop, especially for someone that doesn't multitask. It's just going to sit behind a desk and design all day. That's a big feat. But if you want to get to the level that of these other shops are in design, you have to allow that girl or that guy the design time. You have to eat that cost. That's all there is to it. They have to have time. They're coming straight out of school. If you find someone from another shop that's got some experience, kudos. You're still going to pay for them. But if you're getting a new person, they don't know the process. They're going to make mistakes. And every job you sell, your salesman is selling at certain margin, and you're not allowing the design budget for that job. I can tell you right now, Dan gets on me about this all the time, 90% of the jobs that I do, the design time alone would exceed the budget for the job. 90%. And he's like, you got to charge for design. There's no way. I would blow their mind. And it's 35 hours in one design.
Start blowing their mind, man. Start blowing their mind. Where are they gonna go?
But I'm in a different niche. No one's going to pay me for 35 hours designs for a bus that's going to be on for 30 days. They're not going to do that. Yeah. So it's a different thing. But you got to allow I started out at a Fast Signs, and I get calls all the time from families, friends, relatives, like, hey, my niece, my nephew is going to college, wants to be a graphic artist. What do you suggest? Don't go to college. Go to a trade school if they want to get a little bachelor's degree or something small. Go to a sign shop. They will be thrown a plethora of file formats that they have to learn how to manipulate to get into whatever program they feel most comfortable with to execute the job. That's how they get fast. That's how they learn how to design. I learned how to design. I got a degree in graphic design, but I didn't know shit when I got out of college. They taught us all macromedia. I get in the industry, sign industry, first job's Fast Sign, everything's Illustrator. I'm like, what the hell? So every time I would learn real quickly how to convert files over from Illustrator to macromedia freehand. And then I eventually just forced myself to learn Illustrator, and the way I learned was by dissecting other designers' files, reverse engineering them, learning tricks. And to this day, I get a file from someone, Skeppel, he and I worked together on a project, and he sent a file, and it was in Photoshop, and I was like, how in the hell did he do that? And I broke his layers down and finally figured out a new trick. I was like, damn, I didn't know you could do that. So you learn something new every day, but you got, for a small shop wanting to get to a different caliber or a different level of design, to be identified as that shop that offers the cool design, you gotta pay for that. You gotta allow your designer to develop their skill set and reward them for it. And don't give them a project and say, hey, I need this job. I need 3 proofs to this customer by Wednesday at noon, on top of the other proofs that they've got to get out that week. You're not allowing them time to design anything. Most of my time is spent on throwing darts, just throwing stuff at it, seeing what works good, what works here, and then I go for it. It's who you are, what do you do, how to get in touch with you, 10 seconds. Logo, phone number, web address, power statement, whatever it is, position clearly legible. After that, it's eye candy. The eye candy is what sells. It's the color schemes that like Dan comes up with. It's the package, and that takes time. You don't get that overnight.
Well, well, I appreciate that. We've had a couple conversations about it, and I know even when we brought on our designer, I think it's a bad habit that us as shop owners allow some. We're allowing a lot of this. A lot of the questions that I ask myself is, well, how is this our fault? It's me allowing these customers with bad habits. It's me now allowing them to come on Monday and say, okay, well, we'll have it designed by Friday. Instead of me having some kind of format, which I'm sure, just like Dan or anybody else does, is, here's what it is, here's the process of my design, here's how long it may take. Because if we don't do that, I think what ends up happening is we just end up becoming arrangement artists. We keep taking the same material, the same files. Your logo can go here, your web can go here, your phone can go here. And that's all you're really doing and changing the background. So I appreciate it and want that more for everybody, especially design-wise. Let's do this. And just in case, what I had to do is I want to open it up to the crowd. I know some of you are, and I can tell that you want to ask super intense questions. If you can, ask us some questions, and it can be to any of them. Just say it loud enough, and I'll repeat it through the mic. We got any? Miss Morgan, what about you? Yeah. Come on, what you have for us? I've got all four of these up here, and y'all don't have one question for us. Yes? Oh.
This one's for Dan.
Okay.
How do you come up with your color schemes? Because they are all different, and it just seems like it's like a retro, like they're vintage, but they all work.
Okay. Let me so basically what she asks is, how do you get your color schemes? I'm doing this for the camera as well, so it transfers well. But, how are you developing all of your different color schemes and palettes?
So when we pick colors or we recommend colors for clients, they're based on a competitive analysis of the other trucks that are in that particular market. So that's really how we start that process. Is we say this market already has maybe a big player and they use all orange vans. So orange is basically off the table as far as one of the colors that we can use, or red and blue if it's HVAC, because red and blue is very common, very difficult to own. So we're always just thinking about color schemes that particular client can own uniquely to themselves. A lot of times we work with triads, so we use 3 primary colors. Maybe 2 of them would be more dominant, and then a third one would be more of an accent color. But we are just looking at palettes that seem like they should never go together, and then we just somehow find a way to make them work. And again, the more unique that palette is, then the more ownable that color palette can be for that particular client. And the idea is as that truck is driving through that community, people see those particular colors and they identify those colors only with that particular brand. So, like, again, why do we avoid red, white, and blue? Well, because it's generally related to HVAC and many different HVAC companies. It's also obviously related to Americana. So I can't claim ownership of red and blue for my brand specifically because it's associated with something else. So we're always just, again, looking at how can we put a unique set of colors together that typically you wouldn't expect to work, but somehow do. So there's a couple of books that we use and reference sometimes too to get some ideas of different palettes. But that's one thing that I think I really love about it is, there's still so many different, if there's really 3 primary colors that you're going to use, there's so many variations of those colors to come up with something that will be unique. And the clients, I think, really do like that aspect of it because they really do want that recognition. So when they see that apple green truck, they're the only ones that are thought of when they see that apple green truck. So that all goes back to consumer psychology. It all goes back to having that brand become sticky in the minds of the people that you're selling to. So when they see those vans in that community, when they're ready to hire that company, they know the name to Google at that point. Let me just say one really interesting statistic is that 75% of the people that are hiring a home service company do not know the name of a company before they actually go on Google. So what would happen if your company actually was top of mind and they just simply typed in your name? Well, it's much easier, obviously, to get organic results for a branded keyword that's your company name than it is to be number 1 for heating repair New Jersey or something like that. So that all goes, again, more into the psychology of how the brand needs to live and breathe in that outdoor environment and communicate to that home consumer.
Thank you for that. Any other questions from anybody? Yes?
I do it all the time.
Okay, and I think probably a lot of you that design, this could work for any of them, but basically the question is, and maybe each one of you can chime in on it, but the question is how are you protecting your artwork, when it comes to it? Because so for you, it's obviously brand, for Glarb and Kevin, you may come up with something unique, and even Mully is, but how do you protect and hold that artwork?
So for us, when we design a brand for a client, we actually relinquish the trademark or the rights to that artwork to that particular client. We recommend for all our clients to then register that as a federal trademark. I would say 90% of our clients actually proceed to that step. It's not very expensive. It's usually like $1,500. And so when we're notified or someone tags us on something that's been stolen, whether it's a mascot or a complete wrap design or a complete logo, which it's crazy the stuff people are ripping off, but we then typically will forward that to the client, and then the client will work with the trademark attorneys and then do usually a cease and desist initially, and then it'll be more aggressive if the cease and desist is not acknowledged or dealt with. So part of that again too is education from the sign shop community about what constitutes trademark infringement. Are things that you just find on Google okay to use, and there's just not a lot of discussion really, especially for new designers coming into the industry, about what constitutes actual trademark infringement. So we can't fight those battles because technically we don't own those pieces of art that we create for our clients. It's their clients. But even for like Kevin, I know did that famous Lamborghini, and then I remember that was ripped off and it was done like overseas, like in So like that's technically at his point, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know how your contract reads, but it's your intellectual property. I don't know that you're relinquishing that to be used by anyone else at that point. So protecting that, it's hard. Like a lot of our stuff is ripped off on like Fiverr and 99 Designs and that type of stuff. So the best we can do is educate our clients or potential clients about why you don't crowdsource your brand, why that's a bad idea, and what potentially could happen. So, we've had instances of just mascots completely ripped off, and there are already 6 or 7 trucks into truck wraps and new uniforms and signage, and all that stuff goes in the garbage. So it's like, well, you want to cheap out now and go the cheap route, and that's potentially what could happen, or, pay a professional and you won't have this issue. So, it sucks. Like I've given up on Fiverr. I can't police it anymore. I've probably sent myself personally maybe 60 cease and desist when they've actually just ripped off the images from our website. But it's like whack-a-mole. Like, you shut one guy down and then 5 more pop up. So I've given up. I would be spending all day like pursuing that. Within the country that's using one of our clients' brands, we're gonna have our clients pursue that because they paid us a lot of money to use that particular art. So.
Yep. Ryan, any input on just maybe maybe a lot of it's just pre-setting up the customer and letting them know, like, hey, here's kind of what I expect, or here's what you're getting, when I do these custom designs, each one of you.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I've seen, when customers come to me, 90% of the time, they've looked on Instagram or all these places and they see a wrap that they like and they say, hey, can I do something like this? And that's how they always lead the conversation, but it's up to me to take that idea and create my own version of it. Unfortunately, there's people out there that just will straight up copy your design, but I don't know, I guess it's just a matter of, do you want to pursue that, or is it just like a mild form of flattery? But they can't copy it to a T, because it's not like they can take an image and just superimpose that onto the car. So they would have to technically recreate the design. But that's why I spend all the time that I do with all the layers and all the detail, because you can try as much as you want. And if you get close, power to you. But
it's so stupid at that point. Why not just
do
it something original at that point? You're going to spend so much time trying to steal something else, just create something new.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's like when Dan brought up I think it was last year or year before, I got a text from somebody And my famous Lamborghini, somebody, I think it was in Indonesia, somewhere over in Asia, pretty much duplicated the whole car. I mean, down to the T, down to the carbon fiber kit, the wheels, everything. And I searched for hours to find pictures of this car, and I found a ton. I probably have 100 different angles and whatever. And like Ryan said, they couldn't have taken, no matter how many pictures were taken of that car over, the car was only around for 4 months before it was burned to the ground. So whatever photos were taken in 4 months, that's it. So this designer found whatever pictures, and he couldn't just take that photo, like Ryan's saying, and superimpose it on the car. He got pretty damn close to my design, and I was kind of impressed. The more, I went from being pissed to being like, somebody paid somebody to spend a lot of time, and I know I have an insane amount of hours on that car. So he's pretty close. He missed some spots, but they still did it, and he executed, and stuff matched up. I was proud because the hood matched the fender matched the bumper, and but yeah, it's somebody in Indonesia, I can't do nothing with it. It's hard, and we're like the Mopar guys, and he deals with a lot of Mopar guys. We get a lot of guys from Texas, and they all kind of same thing. They'll send me 3 or 4 pictures from Instagram. Hey, I like this guy's car. I like this guy's car. I'm like, okay, you want a lion on yours? I could do a lion. I'm not going to do that lion. Oh, but I like the colors. I like where it's at. I'm the wrong person for you. I'm not here to duplicate. You came to me for a reason. It's never been to duplicate somebody's work. So that's just not what any of us do. So seeing somebody duplicated, especially back home, to see somebody, like, I've had people literally take pictures of designs I've done for like one of my Super Bs. I created my own custom Super B, hand drew it, which is one of the few things I've ever hand drawn in the last 10 years. And somebody took pictures of it and redrew it in Illustrator or whatever and printed it out. And they didn't even try to match up the size on the car. They did it smaller. So when I saw it, I'm like, oh God, it's terrible. When I saw the car on the road, like I saw it while it was parked. It's terrible. It was pixelated. Like, even though they redrew it, like, they just couldn't get. They literally took a photo and just digitized it. So I'm like, oh, and it's somebody driving in my own city. I didn't see the owner of the car, so I didn't say nothing. But if it pops up on Instagram, I'll contact them, because I own the rights still. Like Dan said, trademark. I've had my logo trademark. He talked me into that years ago. I've sent out cease and desist. Don't be afraid to do that. That really doesn't cost you that much. Pursuing it will, but I have a local shop back home that I had 77 federal and 14 state trademark and copyright infringement charges against for stupid stuff, and they're literally less than 5 miles from me for just them doing stupid stuff. So somebody owns your logo, takes your logo, takes your artwork. It's a little harder for the custom stuff, but don't be afraid to at least. So nobody likes that cease and desist. Like, they don't like that piece of paper, and they see the attorney's names, and it's at the end of the day, it's yours. Protect that. So.
Any other questions? Oh, yes. Speak loudly, and I'll repeat it for you.
I pick and choose my battles with that when it comes to characters.
Yeah, but I think what the question is, he was just asking, is there's probably this gray area that we've seen. A lot of people will take, and if I'm repeating this correctly, is, what is your take on copyrighted stuff? anime, people are wanting to do Marvel, people are wanting to do that stuff. It's probably that same instance of the customer saying, hey, I want to put this on my car, whether it's teams, logos, things like that. How do you all adjust to that, to that gray area of copyright?
I definitely pick and choose. There's only a certain people that I'll do it for. I don't mess with any football teams. I'm a big LSU and Saints fan. I get asked to do a trailer every year, tailgate trailer or whatever, but I'll put a tiger on there. It's not going to be the LSU tiger. I'll make it purple and gold. I'll make it black and gold. I'll put a fleur-de-lis. Never going to have that logo on it. But the Marvel guys and comic books, it's definitely a gray area. But I pick and choose those two. After that, if it's something really, really big, Nate, like I stay away from it. And they get pissed. Some people get, oh, but you did this for this guy. Well, I've also done 5 cars for this guy, and I let them slide in for this one. I'll leave it at that. If they get pissed, go to somebody else. Let somebody else, get it.
Ryan, you want to jump in on this? I'm sure you've had, because I see from afar, and I think you've probably already answered it, but, what if I wanted a Venom car? Are we going to jump on Google and, just take an image and put it on the side of a wrap?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, my background is drawing, so I've always been, an artsy kind of person. So with, like, for instance, a Venom, where, the only way to make it look like Venom is to have the teeth, the tongue, the black, the eyes. So, once you draw it out and you create it your own, now that's fan art, People redraw Marvels and anime characters. I'm not an anime illustrator, by all means. These guys spend years and years and years perfecting that anime look. So if I do get an anime, which I get requested all the time, I do kind of, politely decline, just because I don't that value, like, for me to just go and grab an image and do a couple filters to it, like, you're basically just putting an image and then you're just putting the eye candy behind it. So for me, that's just not what I like to do. But if I do get like a Marvel design, so I had this guy, he called himself the Iron Uber because he's a huge Iron Man fan, and he wanted Iron Man all over the car. So instead of, and we've had this conversation about, whether we're allowed to do that or not. So instead of actually just pasting Iron Man on the side of the vehicle, just turn the entire vehicle into like an Iron Man suit. Or think about it in a different way. If it's an anime character, what are some of like the elements that anime character has that you can kind of incorporate into the car, or do it in like just like an out of a box way, as opposed to just grabbing an image, placing it where you think it would look really nice, and then putting an abstract background, and calling it a day. So it's just like, like everybody's saying, just pick your battles. If it's a paying job and you need the money and you think you can get away with it, by all means do it, but tread lightly, I guess.
Well, and I think Dan probably touched on this earlier, is where Dan's safe is, you're creating all your elements from scratch, but I think some of the things we're faced as shops is, it's those tight deadlines. And for us, we're pretty a stickler of, if we're going to use copyrighted images, we do pay for the rights to use them. And I try to educate my customers that, if I'm going to get on Shutterstock and use an image, just be sure that if you've got that monthly fee, I can download 25 images a day. That is not true copyright protection. Those are standard licenses, which doesn't protect you and the customer. And this is where I think maybe, Dan's talking about certifications and just educating the designer, because if you actually get on Shutterstock and dial in a little deeper about what actually protects you, it's actually the enhanced license. But I also have to let the customer know too that, hey, Jimmy's Plumbing, yes, you want a wrench and some water, I can get those copyrighted images. I want real water and I want a real wrench. Well, if I don't photograph that, yes, I can use these images, but they have to know that we don't own the rights to that. There could be somebody in Kansas with this same wrench. And I think that's probably what, if you don't have that avenue and you can't draw or can't do that, there is a safe way and a way to educate your team, your company to keep, because what if I do Jimmy Plumbing's van? I don't think he's going to be a big deal, and all of a sudden he's on a Super Bowl commercial. Well, now we're in a situation, so for us it's about educating our customer and our small process that we do. We're slowly getting there. We are a mix of multiple things, just like everybody up here, but I think that's, probably what what you would say is you feel safe, Dan. I'm sure Dan was squirming in his seat, like there is no gray area. It's all, but and I'd like for you maybe to speak on this. Something that I do know and I feel, and maybe you can solidify this. Do we believe that that is a myth of somebody taking a logo or taking an image, and the whole myth of, well, if you change it 20%, it's still not. It's still copyright. It's still likeness of image. And I'm sure with the way he's smiling that is definitely a myth. But you've probably got a lot of knowledge and background on this. Can you change a logo just a little bit? 20%. Is that a myth?
Yes, it's a very bad myth. I don't know who started it or where it came from, but the benchmark for trademark infringement is not some mythical percentage of change. It's confusion in the marketplace, and it doesn't have to even be that the same companies are in the actual same marketplace. It's if they were in the same marketplace, would the average consumer be confused about one brand versus the other? So that's the threshold for trademark infringement, is would this be enough to confuse someone? A lot of times our stuff is not even like, it's exact duplicates. So it's not even like they tried to change it, that mythical 20%, but it's exact duplicates. But that is really the threshold. So anything that would cause a confusion to that consumer is the threshold. The other thing when you talked about like Shutterstock and clip art and things like that is clip art actually cannot be used for a logo. Now, plenty of people do use clip art in their logos or use clip art to form the foundation of a logo, but as such, technically, you could never trademark that then, because that artwork actually belongs to Shutterstock. So you're granted the rights to use it, but not the rights to own it, basically. So, that's one of the things we talk about just in our sales process is, well, why don't we ever use clip art in our brands? Because you can't trademark it, and literally the same company in your same market or a similar company in your market could use the same exact artwork. Like one of the biggest heating and air conditioning companies in Chicago, it's called Four Seasons. They literally have clip art as their logo, and if you wanted to just piss them off, like you could literally just launch another company and call it, Three Seasons and use the same logo. And there's literally nothing they can do about it because their logo was derived from clip art. So just be careful about how your contracts are worded as far as what the actual deliverable is that you're providing to them. And you have to be careful about even the phrasing of using the word logo design, because your terms from iStock or from Shutterstock basically explicitly say that you can't do that. You can't sell that as a logo because that artwork is the intellectual property of Shutterstock or iStock or the artist that designed it for Shutterstock and iStock.
It's trademark, like if an AC company used a totally different logo but use the exact same color palette.
So color palettes are a little bit harder to claim intellectual property for. So that we haven't really seen a lot of intentional theft of because to me it's stupid. Like, why would you ever do that? Because now your brand will look like someone else in the same market. So we haven't seen a lot of instances where they've tried to replicate the exact color scheme of a brand that exists in that market. It's typically more just the actual artwork itself.
Jamie, your canvases are so big, maybe we can take a picture and it won't be so pixelated.
Mr. 32 DPI?
Yeah, I wonder if we should have a DPI discussion, because, what's interesting is probably how we prep files. All vector, probably Photoshop. We probably mix both, and it's something that even in our one-day class that I'm trying to do this beginner intro of, hey, here's, we can use pro vehicle outlines, which is great, but then, do we truly have that measurement around the bumper? Some of the things that Ryan needs, and, does the basic sign shop know, can we take a photo of a wave runner or a go-kart and know that when we're going to print it out, is it going to match? So I've tried to do a little bit of education. I know I've been stuck in my ways for years. I'm the old school woodworker who has templating down my way. And then now I have, new designers and and I get around other people and I see that, there's probably 4 or 5 different ways to still get to the same outcome. And then, we talked to Jamie, and he just turns my world upside down about what DPI is, is acceptable, which one's fast, how do we get files out? I mean, and think about it. Probably how people brag about, hey, I was up Diner World, isn't it? Well, my file was 4 gigs, and it's like, okay, but can somebody else's computer open that thing? Like, is there probably a discussion on that?
All right, so it's funny you say that, because just the other day on the Rap Society, I don't know if all you guys are members of Rap Society, but it's an online rap forum, and a guy was talking about his file size working on an iMac, and I think it was like 7 or 8 gig, or maybe 13 gig. And I just came in, and the first thing I complimented him on, kudos that your iMac is crunching that file, first of all. Second of all, I came in with a hammer, is there's no rhyme or reason your file should ever be that size. We're large format printers. It's made to be viewed from a distance. You don't need to print 300 DPI. That's made to be viewed up close. Dots per inch is what we're looking at here. So I challenge you guys, when you get home, take your normal print size that you normally print at and change it to a smaller DPI, same size, and print it, hang them both on the wall, stand 10 feet from it, and then stand 5 feet from it, and decide which one you like best. If you can live with the lower resolution, you just saved an immense amount of time in design, because you're not sitting, and computing power, because you're not sitting there waiting on your processor. Every time you move the cursor, you get the wheel of death. You're not waiting on that anymore. So I have a theory, or a weird Mullyism, if you will. Anything 20 feet and below, I print at 75 DPI final size. And the reason why I choose that, most of your printers come standard 7200 or 72. You open up a file in Photoshop, what's the default resolution? 72. So it's just everyone goes with 72 because it's there. It's screen resolution. There's no rhyme or reason. No one questions it. If you're printing like offset printing, you're going to be up around 300 DPI. So again, back to large format. So when you're at 72 DPI, I print at 75. Does 3 DPI give me better resolution? Absolutely not. But what it does, it gives me better math. What's quarter scale of 72 DPI? Nobody knows it. 75, what's quarter scale? What's half scale? 150, 300. See how easy that math is? So I can go back 15 years and pull up a file and immediately look at the resolution and know, I've got this half scale, I've got this quarter scale, I've got this full scale. And then anything, that's 20 feet and below. Anything 20 feet and above, I print at 50 DPI. So if you've ever seen any of the buses that I do, and you see these awesome photographs on the side that look awesome, no, I did not take those photographs. They were emailed to me from their ad agency. And typically what they do, they've added just a hint of noise, or I'll add just a hint of noise in Photoshop just to feather the edges out, because again, it's emailed. It's a 17 meg JPEG, and it prints flawlessly at 50 DPI. So it's just a process, and Dan likes to bust my chops over the resolution thing because he doesn't do Photoshop. His is all vector based.
All this stuff could be avoided if you just work in vectors.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's what we do. We work in 99% of vectors. I don't have to worry about math or scaling or anything. And my file size is like 3 megs. All right? I'm just saying, try it.
But when you have a dog with a fiddle versus a customer with a fiddle, it's a different animal.
Just a little bit.
You got to be able to manipulate that.
So this is where I'll hop in and respectfully disagree, because I design at 120 DPI full scale with my templates, and I design all in one file. So it's one canvas, that entire design. The reason why I've ended up here at that scale is because I printed at 72 one time, and on my computer screen it looks awesome. Then you go out to the car and you look at it and you're like, how come some of these details aren't showing up? So then I tried at 80 DPI, and you start seeing a little bit more detail showing up. And so now that I've upgraded my computer, sometimes my files are like 25 gigs while I'm working on them. I'm at 120 DPI, and you can see in the Oracle booth the amount of detail that you're able to achieve with just that bump. Even going from 72 to 80, you'll see a difference in detail when it's printed. But everybody has their preference.
But the key word is dots per inch, and the key word that you just said is detail. The more dots per inch, the more detail. We are large format printers, so
Right.
you are specifically increasing your resolution because all your routes are geared. People pay you for the detail.
Correct.
It's not on the commercial side of things; it's on custom. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Because
to
if
up
I was
the
doing a
resolution.
bus wrap at 120, my computer
You wouldn't
would
do a
blow
bus wrap
up.
at 120. There's no way. You do it in forts.
Yeah, I did a 40-foot yellowfin at. I tried to do it at 120, and I got to the point where I couldn't, and so I had to bump it down to 100. But I tried, you know.
Most of my big stuff's 100, full scale. I'm the same way with Ryan. Everything full scale. 100's the lowest I'll absolutely go. And then commercial side, 72 all day. I've never done 50. I'm gonna have to try that. I'm gonna get home, but yeah, 100 and.
Yeah, so we see the future design certifications will be now a commercial or a detail-oriented design certification, and you can see why I waited to the last to ask the Pixel War question, because we don't want to have a brawl or anything going on with that. But I appreciate everybody's time, and I can't thank you guys enough from everywhere you've traveled to be here. I know it was super helpful for us. I was excited when we kind of were able to get the design titans together and let everybody know, I think this has been helpful for everybody. Just each one of you has a different style. I know that, each one inspires me differently. And for us, we're able to do different style projects. So I knew that there's probably shops that do work like Dan's, may have an opportunity every now and then to do a cool wrap, like Glarb. And then if you ever have a bus and you make it 100 dpi, I know Jamie is going to show up at your doorstep. But I can't thank you guys enough. It's been super fun for me. I'm glad you guys made it, and I appreciate everybody sitting in and listening to us talk about nerd design stuff here. So, all right, thank you guys.